All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. Got my guy Alex Blickle here with me as always, and we're starting a little bit early. Alex is saying, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. We always try and start at least before on time, but we got a little early this week, so I'm excited to get it rolling. Got a baseball slate coming up, I believe 12:10 Eastern time, so I'll let people get through that. If you guys have your questions, you can throw them in the chat, but we are going to be breaking down all things for the final Rocket Classic in Detroit, and that's going to be the setup there. So I guess the final Rocket Classic, and it's also in Detroit, but there's been some major course changes. We will talk about the course fit, the weather. We'll talk about how this sets up now with the new course changes that I just talked about, and then we'll also talk about the chalk builds, how you can leverage that this week, a little bit of FGWC recap right quick, and then go from there. But Alex, we missed last week. I was traveling out to the 3M. There's definitely some conversation to be had there quick, but I will say, the big takeaway for me, we got to play the course on Monday in the same conditions. Mm-hmm. These guys, look, it's spoiler alert. They're good. These guys are good. It's like a saying, all that stuff. The ball, you can't find it. If it goes in the rough, there's going to be balls. If there was a tournament there, thankfully there isn't next year, because it wouldn't be looking for our balls that we lost on Monday on this course, because the rough is, and this is a course they're shooting 24 under. Man, you're a golfer. You know what this is, but man, it is crazy difficult on these courses. And we were with a scratch golfer, and he had some amazing shots, and then some really bad ones too. So it's crazy how good these guys are.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny. Like one of the things that I always look at is course rating and slope. Like if you play a lot of golf, if you keep a handicap, about course rating and slope. Essentially it measures like how difficult the golf course is. And some of the courses on tour that we think of as like these birdie fests, when you actually go play those courses, the first thing you'll notice is, oh my God, this rating and slope is like the highest I've ever seen. It's such a long course. Like, how are they shooting these kinds of scores? It's because they're that damn good. And yeah, the courses that actually do challenge them, think about how tough they have to be in comparison to the ones that we think of as like birdie fests. They're actually like, oh, it's a course rating of 78. So like, a scratch golfer is going to shoot 6 over or something like that, right? So yeah, it's incredible how good they are. And I'm glad you had a fun experience. I know it wasn't the outcome you totally wanted, but we talk about it all the time, and I've told you this many times. Just getting there is such a ridiculously cool accomplishment. So hopefully you still feel really proud of that. And it's kind of the same, I think, as winning tickets, right? It's like you're only going to, all you can control is how many chances you give yourself. And then once you get there, you kind of just have to hope things break your way.
That's the key, right? It's not, I loved it. The winner, Woodward, was just an awesome dude, Matt. And he had said, even in his little interview after the win, he had 3 entries going in, and he was up there. He looked like a huge opportunity to win. And then Saturday had these really low scores, and he's like, oh shit. And then people caught up to him. And so he really had to sweat Sunday, but ultimately in the end, he came through, which was awesome to see. But he said, like, this doesn't define me. Like, it's a win. It's huge. He's very thankful and excited and happy, and was just a really modest, down to earth guy. But he said, like, if he didn't win, he's played poker for years. Like, this is your ups and downs. You just have to keep putting yourself in the position to make that happen. And, back in 2024, I came 47th. I look at it as like, 18th is quite an accomplishment. And also, I was with you on the Doug Gim hate. Came out of the spa on Friday morning. I'm thinking, I'm all good. My VIP rep is like, oh man, it looks like he'll at least get a 5 or 6. And then next hole is hole 17 for Doug Gim, and he makes that double. And it was just really, really bad after that. I could have made it without Max McGreevy. He was in there, and he missed the cut at 1 off the line at 2 under. But I thought I had Gim, and Gim was a separator, right? Only 6 people in the tournament had him of the 50. And so I had a crazy run out, but I will say this, the Sunday I got, Alex, was insane, because I have a 4 or 6. I'm thinking it's like a min cash at best. I got the Bez 5 under with the all 4 under 70. I got the Zach Blair all 4 under 70. He needed like a birdie at the end, and he almost had an eagle try. He never even goes for it any of the days. The last day he goes for it and sticks it. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. And then McNeely had the low Saturday, and then the really low, the low Sunday. So that helped. And then lastly was the winner, Koiven. So I did have the winner on the lineup, which was nice. Just didn't quite fully get there, but best live final, maybe second best live final I've ever been at. There was one other, but it doesn't really matter. Just noting it, this was a great experience all around. And like you said, it's fun just to be there. So I'll have a bigger recap over on DFS Mastermind. You guys go dfsmastermind.com. I always recap my live final events with pictures and breakdowns of the lineups and theory and how I played it and whatever. But I felt really good about how I played. I was never moving off Doug Gim with my process. And people, again, it's not about the pick and the play. It was the process. I was on him, and that's what happens, man. I know he hurt you as well.
Yeah, it was brutal. It made it even more brutal. Like, he made a 19-footer or something on his first hole on Friday to get to 3 under. It's like, all right, he's there. All we need him to do is play even par the rest of the day on a really, really easy golf course in perfect scoring conditions. And he just had one of his worst ball striking rounds in years. It was actually like his short game and putting that actually kept him at 3 under late in the round. And then the water ball on 17 was just a real kick in the dick, if you will. So that was not fun, but still really good week. And lots of really exciting things. It's also, I think, like this is the part of the year where we might start to see some week 1 NFL tickets in the lobby sometime soon. So also keep your eye out for that. And it's yet another reason to be just as into MLB DFS this time of year as PGA.
Yeah, I didn't see it yet. I've been waiting all weekend because I got to assume like August 1st. I mean, NFL pricing is coming soon. We always get it super early. That's why everybody complains about week 1 because like all the pricing has been out for a month and blah, blah, blah. But it's coming soon, but they got to get those tournaments out there. So I'm expecting a very big start to the year. Also, they teased the Fantasy Football World Championship while we were there, just of note. So that is going to be in Miami this year in South Beach. Nice. And it's going to be, I think they said, the biggest prize pool ever. So there's still, again, people talk about DFS and grow. Like, football's never going away, and it's actually only getting bigger. So I'm excited about that one. Let's talk about these course changes. We're going to skip the topic of the week for this one. We recapped some. Like I said, I'll go more into it on DFS Mastermind. If you guys have questions, throw them out there. But I will say, let's talk about these course changes. $16 million put into changing this course. This was why I said what I mentioned earlier. Like you said, very easy golf course, to your point, for the pros. Not as easy as you'd think, but also be like, oh, the scores aren't going to be as low this year. Well, no shit. They literally took away par 5s and stuff, but it's the scoring. And again, from an Eagles perspective, yeah, you might lose some Eagles out there, things like that. But I just mean in general, they're still going to beat the course up for what the par number has been moved to. And I honestly don't know what your thoughts are, but I just don't know if they can make these courses as hard as people say or think they can. We've seen this before just too many times. Like, oh, they made all these changes. This should be a real challenge. And it's like, nope, they just destroy it. So any thoughts from you on this? And I'm sure you've got a lot, so I'll let you go into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where I want to start. I think the first place to start is we should recognize that the test that the course presents these players doesn't change just because you take a 540-yard par 5 and turn it into a 500-yard par 4. I guess the scores aren't going to be quite as low. So, if in the past, let's say 26 under 1, now it would be 18 under because you're taking 2 par 5s a day and turning them into par 4s. That's still a pretty low score for a winning score. But more importantly, it's the fact that the way the golfers are being tested is the exact same from that change. So there are other changes that I do think will be a little bit meaningful. It seems like the green complexes are a little bit more challenging. Both from an around the green standpoint and then also making putts. I think the biggest point that I want to make is Donald Ross courses are unique. He has a very kind of unique style of golf course. I actually played a couple Donald Ross courses kind of consistently in college, and I did not like either one of them. Like they just weren't tailored for my game. I struggled to kind of understand the best way to approach them because they definitely require more strategy than just go out there and hit good golf shots. So one of the splits that I'm looking at this week, because I actually found it to be really predictive, is performance on other Donald Ross courses. And that includes a bunch of major championship, like one-off courses, but then it's also here and Sedgefield. And interestingly, like one of the things you'll notice when you kind of read about the course changes this week is that a lot of it was restoring the initial Donald Ross plan, the initial Donald Ross design, especially around the green. And, with fairway bunkers off the tee that actually are in play for some guys, maybe not the longest guys. So we'll talk more about distance in a minute. But interestingly, historically, you've been better off predicting performance here at the Rocket Classic by looking at performance at Sedgefield for the Wyndham than looking at past performance at the Rocket Classic itself, because what little like Ross characteristics there were are more prevalent at Sedgefield than they have been here. That probably will change moving forward because now a lot of the Ross like design has been restored, but I found that to be really, really interesting. So, Donald Ross specialist is something that I'm really looking at this week. Same with easy conditions and same with tree lined courses. The other point I want to make about tree lined courses, Ron, PJ Splits 101, had some really cool pictures just kind of following some guys around in practice rounds this week. And there was one really, really good one that I think tells the story of why tree lined courses can be predictive, because it's not like there are a million trees here. It's not like when you miss, you're always going to be missing in trees and chipping out sideways like you do at RBC's Heritage, for example. But one of the kind of obstacles that trees present you, and this picture was of Cam Young, and you can just see like he's hitting through this chute of trees. The other thing that trees do is that they force you to play specific shot shapes off tees, and you can't just hit like a banana cut or a banana draw when you want to, because the ball can't fly through trees, obviously. And so I thought that that was a really cool thing that, again, showed a lot of predictive value here. But at the end of the day, I do expect distance to continue to be really predictive. This has always been a Bombers course. I think the changes were kind of made trying to prevent that from being the case, but the rough is not that bad. It sounds like it's patchy. It sounds like, one of the kind of biggest potential avenues for making this more of an accuracy course than a Bombers course was if the greens were really, really firm, which is often the case when you renovate greens and you put new greens in. But all reports are that they're actually pretty soft, surprisingly. And so I do expect this to be a Bombers course once again, especially if there are certain fairway bunkers that were put in place where they're saying, okay, now it's going to make guys be strategic or play around these bunkers. And oops, the top 10% of distance guys can still just carry those bunkers and take them out of play. Like that could actually mean that distance is going to be more predictive now than it's been in the past here. So I definitely want to lean on Bombers as much as I can while looking at guys who play well on Donald Ross courses, while looking at guys who play well on tree line courses. And easy conditions are another split that's been really, really predictive here in the past. And again, just because the scores aren't going to reflect such easy conditions now, because you have some par fives and a par fours, like the golf course, the test is the same. So I do expect easy conditions to continue to be really predictive.
One thing I want to ask is Ron posts a ton of great stuff. And, when I was there a couple of years ago, get to meet Ron at the Fantasy Golf World Championship when it was in Detroit for the Rocket Mortgage Classic at the time in 2024. And he was going through some stuff then and showing it all to us. But this time around, he did mention that point you talked about on the greens being softer, especially for new greens and renovated and everything put in. But he also, it was either him or somebody else that mentioned they watered them Tuesday night. How quick can those greens, in your opinion, go from people saying they're softer to being the firmness we expected versus, over the next 2 days? Because it was like Wednesday morning when that got posted, Tuesday morning. I think it was from Monday night, he was saying. And then Tuesday morning, that report was posted. Well, now they're going to golf tomorrow morning, another day from now. So how quick can those things tighten up and firm up?
They can, but I'd be really surprised if they don't continue to water throughout the week. And then on Saturday overnight, so before Saturday, it looks like they're going to get some storms. So at most, you're probably going to get Thursday and Friday without any water. Like I said, I think they're going to be watering each day. So I would expect them to be soft throughout. And the other thing is, like, it's important to remember that the difference between like really soft and kind of neutral or even a little bit firm greens isn't that much. Where you actually get like a big effect is when you get to like, Bay Hill at its firmest, where balls are taking a huge first bounce, especially if they're coming out of the rough with no spin, like they're just going to topple forward. I think it's an extremely low chance that we see anything like that here this week.
All right. As far as the weather goes this week, I mean, it ties to it a little bit because you just mentioned the storms and that on the weekend, but, potential, all these other factors. But coming in, don't really see much. Is there anything that you wanted to key in on with the weather before we get to start looking at the chalk build?
No, it doesn't look like it's going to be too interesting. Light winds, gusts under 20 miles per hour each of the first 2 days, maybe even less the second day. So it doesn't seem to me like weather is going to be part of the story at all this week.
Yeah, so we're going to bring it up in a minute. We are going to go to the Stone 2.0 over at Ship It Nation. This will be the rough draft. We'll break it down. I got the optimal up, and then we'll look down from there at what we're doing. Before I get into that, I do want to remind everybody. So I think it's just over 3 weeks, I should say now, that shout out to the big guy in the sky. We've got the big guy event in Las Vegas celebrating James Degenerate 75. Many of you know him as. We will be in Las Vegas for the weekend of this, but the event is Friday, August 21st, 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. You can go to shipitnation.com/the. It's the big guy event with dashes, the-big-guy-event, or just go on my X at ToeTagginTambo. The link's there, or DM me if you want details on how to get down to this thing. But it's going to be a good time. We've got the whole Detroit ballroom rented out, so that's on the 12th floor. We've had some get-togethers in the past when James was here with us, but this will just really be a night to celebrate and remember him, the entire DFS community, or any fantasy sports players out there, anyone who wants to sort of come celebrate and remember James are welcome to the event. It's not just for Ship It Nation or anything like that. It's put on for everybody. There's drinks, there's appetizers, there's memorial video, maybe some games or a signature drink with ranch waters and all the stuff that the big guy would want. His mom's going to be there. There's just a lot of different things that you should be a part of it if you can be. I know not everybody can make it, but be sure to go check out the site or just hit me up directly and we'll go from there. If you guys want to join Ship It Nation, you can get in right now, $49 for your first month. Get the rest of sort of golf through the playoffs. We've got all the baseball going on. NFL just around the corner. But I will say, Jordan did mention it. So I saw it in MLB. They do got the 44 mega tickets. There is a few satellites now, but it's not posted yet for NFL. But that will be obviously week one that we see that. The question is, do we see like a $10 and $100? Do we see a $25 as usual and cut it off? Do we see the big $5 with like 800 million people? Probably. So that probably makes it up. So maybe it's like the $5, the $20, and the 44, but that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Like Alex said, if you're checking that stuff out, this is the optimal that I have right now. Anyway, Alex, again, the rough draft, ownership's not final, nothing like that. But you see Goddard up, Siwoo, you see Spawn, who's definitely popping as a guy in the 8K range this week. I'm not sure if Davis Thompson will get as much love, but he'll get some this week for sure. And then Sungjae is a projections popper. I'm the biggest Sungjae fan of probably anyone. I know why he wore the Sungjae Him Malbon sweater last week on Thursday, because I don't know if he was getting to them. I mean, this guy just doesn't have it still right now. And maybe this will be the week because it looks like the week on paper. Everyone's saying it's going to be his week on paper. I thought it was funny in your Discord. I think it was Donnie B, the man. He posted like, wow, Sungjae's stuff is improving. His iron game is really improving. Check it out. And he has the chart. And it's like red 130th, red 120th, red 114th, red 107. It's like he's improving though. Give me your thoughts on this lineup, and you can give the Sungjae jabs as well if you want.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the type of structure that we're going to see. I think ownership's going to be pretty balanced up top. So like, I do think Cam might separate a little bit, but then all of Xander, Goddard, Siwoo, Wyndham, Cantlay, Ben Griffin, Jake Knapp, JJ Spawn, and then a little bit of Ryan Gerard. Like, I think all of these guys are going to get a decent amount. And so we'll probably see most lineups have minimum 2, probably 3, maybe even 4 of those guys. And then, based on how many of those guys, you get a secondary level of chalk, like in the lower 8Ks where you've got Akshay, Højgaard, Thor Bjornsson, Bridgman, Keegan, Davis Thompson, as you mentioned, Jackson Suber, Corey Connors, and then down in the values, I think we'll see Coles and Meisner probably get maybe like the 2 most popular down here. Some on Michael Kim, some on Jordan Smith, some on Sungjae Im. So yeah, pretty much in lockstep with you. But I will say, like, this is such a surprisingly strong field, and I think the fact that there's no Scotty has helped pricing, where it at least doesn't seem like anyone is massively underpriced or massively overpriced to that point. And so I think it's going to be a week where, for the most part, like, you don't have to spend a ton of time thinking about ownership this week, because as long as you're in certain sections of the pricing down the board, like the highest, for example, that I have under $8,500 is Akshay at 14.9% in single entries. So you're just not running into the kind of chalk that we've seen in past weeks.
Yeah, like I just threw up another version of it because you had that was 2 that I saw as well. Like Meisner and Cole look like they'll pick up some steam, and that's just, people like to play Meisner. The other thing is there's some like weird pricing factor. So anyway, like just to finalize it, I do think Sungjae's popping enough in the projections that we can move him up some. Like our ownership will come up on him for sure. Meisner and Cole are guys in there. Like I said, will be a little bit more spread out even up top. But just noting it, this type of build seems pretty common. And I know like you can get to 3 9Ks instead of JJ Spawn. Sure, you can do the Cam Young and then skip over the 9Ks or even play them. But I love what you said. Like the other thing too is like, I don't know how to explain. Like last week, the field was buoyed or I guess it was like pushed because of Scotty Scheffler. Like you added Scotty to the mix, but after that it was like I think it was like Brian Kirshner. These people tried to like make fun of him and said like he said this event sucks. And they're like, well, this event doesn't suck. It's got Scotty Scheffler and Tony Finau. And it's like, okay, you just put your own foot in your mouth when you said that. He was not even being that harsh on them, but Kirshner. But they were like saying he was saying it, but it kind of was a rough field after Scotty. Like it was awesome. Like I'm telling you how I was there. It was phenomenal to be there for Koivin's first win. The atmosphere was electric. Like when it was Scotty and Hideki on Saturday. Yes, Hideki would have been the guy I would have said, by the way, not Tony Finau, but just noting it. Nothing against Tony, but that was part of it. But there was a lot of good DFS plays, meaning guys that we know and play every week, and we're like trying to talk about. That's what I feel about this event. It's a little stronger up top with like yes, no Scotty, but Cam Young, X, Scotterup, Siwoo, Koiven, Clark. Like, yes, much better that way. But I'm saying the part that makes it more fun to me from a DFS perspective is, okay, well, what about like Decky did play good last week. Cantlay's here. What about Knapp? Incredible Sunday watching that round. Spawn, okay, like him. Bhatia, he's exciting. Hogarth, like, oh, wait, Thor is here still. And boom, I can do that for the 7K range too. And then you even get into the 6s. And I'm not saying a lot of people are going to end up there because the standard roster construction, but don't tell me people aren't thinking about playing some, Chris Kirk, some Lee Hodges, some Mao, people like Max McGreevy. There's a bunch of other names down here. Sargent, the conversation around him and Koiven, right? Being the two prospects. And then, you got Stout out there and other guys too, but just Hoey. And then the other thing too, is some of the pricing. So Bez was like 80 something last week, 8,700. Was he 8? No, he was 7,900, I guess. Sorry, 7,900. Yep. But he had a decent week and he drops to 73, and some other guys around him are higher now. Meisner, missed the cut as this. Cole's decent week and he's down. Grazerman, insane Sunday, down to 7,300. Nearguard down from 77. So like it still changed some of the pricing around. And then guys like Doug Gim, who missed the cut. Kiefer missed the cut. A lot of missed the cut guys. Suber missed the cut. Pearson Cootie missed the cut. Brennan screwed people on Sunday. All their prices are down too. So I don't know. I think it's a really fun DFS slate. And I think this is going to be good to talk about. Is there anything else with the chalk build or any of those comments that you want to sort of run through before we hop in? But I do see that like maybe we look at quickly a Cam Young version. Anything else you see?
Not really. I think because again, like ownership can be so spread out once you get past like JJ Spawn and Ryan Gerard, kind of where the one thing I do think is worth looking at is let's see what a build looks like if you try and get 4 of those top guys in instead of just 3. So like, what if you started with Spawn, Knapp, Cantlay as the most expensive, and then like Ben Griffin or Hideki or someone like that? What does that leave for those final 2 spots?
I'm going to go Spawn, Knapp, Cantlay, Henley in a second. I just want to show something quickly, though, for those looking at this. Like, again, I don't know. I think we said it was Spawn. This is with a 6K guy, but this is with Young and Gotterup, by the way, right? So just of note, all I was trying to show is we'd said, what's his name? Cole? I won't even round it out, but you can also go like, if you put the Cam Young version in here and say, okay, I'm not going to play Spawn because he's going to be so popular. Well, even if you do like the Sungjae Meisner Cole thing we did at the bottom, you're still in that mid. And I know nobody might want to, I think the chalk version of this was people said Keegan Bradley, right? And it's very close to the number, but just to note it, this is not that different from the build we just looked at. It's just a different version of it, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's go back. Let's go Clark, Cantlay. Would you say Gotterup, Knapp, or Knapp?
Any of those top 4 guys.
It's probably, I mean, just for what people can fit, though, it's probably this, right? This, I guess this would be the version of it, and then I'll let you play with it. But I'm just saying,
like Clark. Yeah,
I'm just showing.
I mean, that's
breakdown of it, and I'm going to put Novak because people love Novak at these. Well, they loved him at the John Deere Classic. Maybe they'll hate him here, but he's $7,100. So, and it looks like they will from an ownership perspective. But just to give you an idea, that's close but then you will have to dip into the 6s if you're doing more than that with these 8K guys.
Yeah, so I think what would happen is I think a lot of people would go from Clark there down to Hideki so that they can get up to Meisner or Coles as that last guy in.
Let's do that.
But yeah, so essentially, like the main point here is just this isn't difficult to do, right? Like you can do this while still playing some of the most popular, quote unquote, highest probability cheap guys, and so I do think that we're going to see lineups like this as well. And so I just think it's an important point to make that like. It just because we said, hey, the most common lineup is going to have 2 or 3 of those top guys. Like if your thought is, oh, I'm going to get 4 of those top guys instead, that's not separating you in any way. So I think this is the kind of lineup that we also need to kind of keep in mind and try to leverage off of. And so, yeah, I again, like I don't think this is really a week where like roster construction is the way to get different. It's like you actually have to do it by the players that you use.
Yeah, I think that's a key component there too, because the other thing is, so this just shows, and I think now people have seen it enough. It's up on the screen, or we talked through it. I mean, this one was finished out on Cantlay Hideki. It could have been, I guess it could be Henley Hideki, or it could be like Clark, Ben Griffin, whatever you guys decide. But that's like you say, you're not really getting that. Well, I went to 3-8K. Like you kind of did, but you kind of didn't. And so like if I'm going 8K, one of my quick ones, just early on, I would say for sure. Actually, I'll wait because I'm going to save it, but I'll keep going through it with you here. My takeaway though would be that none of these lineups are seeing the 6K range, even if you do go all the way up to who, is probably the most owned just because he's easy to fit in many ways. But Cam Young, I don't know. You could see like some of these, if somebody picks like a Gotterup, I showed you how easy it was to still get these two. You could actually see where Gotterup is higher owned than Young or something just because he fits starting the build plus going into the build. I don't think Koivin's going to stay, but if Clark gets love, what's he right now? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's about that. Yeah, I think it's between these two, and it just depends on if more people decide to go with the balanced version than the one we talked about. And then keep in mind, like Alex always talks about, if you're starting it with Gotterup, a lot more of those lineups are going to have JJ Spawn because we just showed you that's what if you don't have anyone above, you can fit the 8K, and then the more popular 8K guys get pushed into more of those lineups. If you start with these two, it's less likely that there's an 8K guy at all. So to Alex's point, you can look at a bunch of different angles, but I think there's something to be said for this week for the new course, everything we talked about so far on the show, the new course, the roster construction thing we just mentioned, all these factors, the pricing, the DFS darlings of like, there's so many of them in the field, all of that, to think about that. I don't know if just skill stacking, but almost like what you think, how the field is going to play. Because if you get it right, there might only be a smaller pool. Like for example, and I know a lot of guys bomb it for sure, but instead I'm just going the easiest one. If you said, okay, I'm going to stick with bombers no matter what anyone says, then and you've got all good lineups with the bombers, you can make your pool that much smaller, that much quicker to work off of. If that's what you decide. If you said, to your point on the splits, yeah, I like all these splits. These 3 stand out, and it'd be nice to have somebody who's good in all 3 of the splits that you mentioned. But someone might say, you know what? Alex really hit home with me when he talked about the tree-lined setup here. So I'm going to find guys within the tree-line splits that also have good projections, that also have good this, and I'm going to stick with that. And then if that's right, and these trees do become a factor, I'm just throwing things out there, but you get what I'm saying. To me, that's where you get different. It might still not be, in the end, it's always the picks in the result. Like I say, the picks are a result of the process, though, and the process to me would be how I just explained it. If you're right, you could be all the way right because you've already brought your player pool size down a ton. And I've talked about that for years about building in sets. That's how I look at it. You get to shrink your player pool immediately if you go with that angle. And I don't think this is a bad week to do that because this is a week where there's a lot of unknowns beyond that. And then there's a lot of names. So people can get overwhelmed with that, right? Like, well, I like this guy. I like this guy. I heard this guy. It's a lot of that too.
Yeah. I think one of the most important points that you made there was like, you want that to work directionally in your favor where it's not dependent on that thesis playing out exactly that way. It's like this lineup is good regardless. And if the tree line splits end up being a really big piece of this, or if Donald Ross courses end up being like even more predictive than they were in the past here, my lineup goes from being good to even better. And I'm not counting on that being the thing that makes it a good lineup. It's already a good lineup. That's just the thing that could take it over the top. So I think that's a really good way of putting that.
Such a huge factor. And that's why we talk about this all the time. But like, this is what DFS Mastermind is all about. That's the foundation. So Alex and I got two things going on separately, and this is one of them. Like DFS Mastermind, you can go there, you can join it. You can just get the modules for less than $50 if you want to go start off. If you want all of the courses and the entire setup, you can get it for $497. You can use the $47 towards that. But that's the once a month roundtable Q&A, the Discord, all the pro interviews, the podcast feed, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea behind this is to teach what you just talked about. How it's not, that's why I would say it's not the picks and the plays. It's not who you play, it's how you play them. That's the thought process around that. But then you take something like you do in your Discord with the splits and your site that's up now that people can check out like that. That's kind of the setup where you can then say, okay, I learned the concept from Mastermind, but now I'm going to go apply it via the other stuff. If a lot of people that, just have splits or just have something, they're just kind of guessing on stuff, but they're not thinking about the roster construction in a different way to what you just pointed out there. So it's kind of like you got to combine those two to be able to get yourself to where you're like, I'm playing a really good lineup, but it also is going to be even better if this happens, or I'm playing it because of this, but it's actually good even if that doesn't happen. And that's where people are like, well, if I hadn't known that, I would have done this. Or if you might not think like that yet. And you'd be surprised, man, how many people I got to meet at the Fantasy Golf World Championship that were, first time at a live final that just start explaining their process and telling you. And I'll tell you what, the most common thing that was said was people don't like to pay tuition, but in this game, you have to. And that was basically the words one guy used that others echoed it in a different way. But they said like, man, I just lost a bunch of money and I wanted to, I learned the game, but I paid for Discords. I paid for places that I could learn. And I paid to try and figure this game out just like I would anything else. If I was learning golf, I would go get a golf instructor and pay them money. If I want to, learn how to drive a car, I go buy driving school classes and then I go be able to drive a vehicle and take it on the road. Like you pay for that extra that you can sort of learn from others' mistakes and get better. And then you can start to learn how to apply it. And then that's the process of like playing a little bit smaller, playing satellites, things like that. But anything you want to add when it comes to that stuff? I know you're doing a ton of new and good things around DFS and analytics and all this stuff right now.
Yeah, I think it's a cool point that you made there, and it's true. And I would say like it's true no matter who you are. So like even myself, even you. We are constantly looking for new ways to get better at this game, to learn more, to get new information, right? And so whether that's subscribing to a site or whether it's, like I'm paying $100 a month for, a powerful Claude subscription so I can go and do this research myself and then put it in the Discord. And so now instead of paying $100 a month for Claude to do that, you just go pay for my Discord instead and stuff like that. Right. And so, quick shout out, a new site is up, BlickAnalytics.com, BLICK analytics.com. That's where all this stuff is. And, what you'll see is like all of the analysis, all of my slate thoughts, stuff like that is in the Discord. And then all the projections, the ownership, the splits are now up on the site, just so it's a lot easier for people to actually see those charts. And they're fancy. They're kind of cool. It's very, very kind of just neat, I guess, that I'm able to create this stuff online now. Because like 6 months ago, like I never ever would have come close to being able to build something like this. So AI is really cool, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot very rewarding, kind of learning about it. But the coolest part of it is now I get to share that with all the subscribers. It's just it's been really, really fun, and can't wait to continue to do more, especially into the NFL season.
Yeah, the BlickAnalytics, okay, Kyle, but Blick scored is the one. Whoever came up with that originally, I don't know who it was, but that's the way to go on that one. I love the point you made about like we pay too. I love the Claude, actually, that exact example is like, again, everybody can go. I use this all the time with our partner at SaberSim or other sites that people use and different factors where it's like you can go just pay for it and press buttons and hope it works out. But it's like you pay $100 because you also have experience now with prompting it a ton and getting the right answers out of it and finding out and knowing how to adjust. And anybody could do that, but it's way better for someone to have the foundation. Or if you're not going to go pay to get the foundation, skip over it and move over to just paying for somebody who is and who already has that experience and has done it. And that's kind of the difference with that. So I love that call out, man. That's just a good one. We're paying for a ton of stuff ourselves to get better and learn and focus and be able to create stuff and do different things. Lots of people can do the same. Let's look at how to leverage this build. Yeah. So we talked about a couple of these different builds that we saw. I mean, you don't see a lot of 6K guys, if any. Is it because the 6K range is just too weak this week, if you will, or is it because you just think it's just because it's so unnecessary and maybe people will just pick a handful? I don't see very many, maybe sub 5 is what we see across the board. Like what 6K guys stand out to you, if any? Mao, maybe Chris
I
Kirk?
think like Haotong maybe, but it's not fun down here. And like, there's a very clear kind of massive drop off in all of my projections once you get into that like upper 6K range really. And so I'm very much not intrigued by it kind of at all. And yeah, it's a tough one to get sold on. And I think what I noticed too, by the way, is like there's not much temptation to go down there, because if you just look in the upper or in the lower 7K range, like you can find guys who are projected a lot better at pretty good ownership too. You don't need to go down. Like sometimes everyone who's worth a damn in the low sevens is like, okay, well, they're going to be 10% on, they're going to be 15% on, something like that. And so if you actually want to find a good player down there, or at least someone who's like intriguing with low ownership, you have to go into the 6Ks, because that's just like that. You have to do that to avoid ownership, let alone looking for someone who actually has some real upside. This week, we can find all of the really good ownership plays we want in those low sevens. So there's no reason to me to go any lower.
Yeah, I think I love all that and agree. One thing I'll add, though, again, this is obviously more large field tournament where you're taking on the risk, but I think most people are inclined to go Cam Young and skip the 9s, or Cam Young with Goddard up, or and then down from there, or Goddard up and down. Or I definitely think a lot of people just say, oh, well, if I'm not going to go Cam Young, let me just, I heard them say people are going to play two 9K guys. I'm going to play 3 or 4. We saw that too. It wasn't like that different. So I will say that, yes, this will be a little bit uncomfortable, but you still have 6,800 per player when you load up like Cam Young with 2 9Ks. And maybe it's not Goddard. I used a popular one. You could probably get that. I mean, I know you can mathematically, but I'm saying, let's say this is your guys. Well, your average is now the low 7s. And you might have to pick your 1 6K guy, but we already said they're all going to be sub 5% for the most part, very likely. And it's not like you're saying, well, now I got to pick a bunch of them. It's not like picking Scotty last week where he comes in second and still is nowhere. He was in the live final. I know he won it for the guy, but I'm just saying he wasn't really needed in all those large field tournaments because he was 14-2 and you needed to make extra room for him at the bottom. This is an example with like Cam Young, 2 9Ks where you don't even have to go into the 6s. But if you do, you can still play around with a ton of low-owned guys to no-owned guys in the 7K range. And by that, I mean sub 5%. You could get 3 sub 5%ers in this lineup, no problem.
Yeah.
Not have Goddard up, not have Spawn, not have Mac Meisner and Cole and Sung Jae, and still be just fine. And this is totally different. And you might only be picking like one guy down there, but let's say you had a splits guy who looks good. Alex, I'm just going to use a popular one, but let's say Chris Kirk looks fine. Well, you now have almost 7,200 per. You can do, there's so many guys from 7K. Let's go. If I can do it this way for you guys on the screen. Like all these guys are pretty much going to work, and Sung Jae will get a boost. Potgeider maybe, Coles maybe, Grazerman maybe. Like, yeah, there'll be some late steam on a little of these guys, but we're talking steam to 10% maybe or something, 11, like that type of range. Yeah. So anyway, you don't have to take them. There's 20 guys around them. So you could fill this lineup out. So I think one of my first thoughts is, and it didn't even need a 6K, I just showed it with a $6,900 version, is to go with Cam Young and 2 9K guys as a way to get different up top right out of the gate. What do you got?
I mean, down in the low 7s, like as I said, there are so many guys who really intrigue me. You can start with Billy Horschel as a pivot off Sung Jae Im. Like his irons are as hot as anyone's in the world right now, coming off a 13th place finish where he actually drove the ball well too. All he needs to do is make some putts, and historically, like that's not something that will hold Billy Horschel down for a while. Eventually, he's going to start making putts again. So I like him quite a bit. I think. Kevin Yu, Michael Kim, you mentioned Potgieter, Grazerman, Wallace, Kiefer, Cootie. Like there's so many options down here that I think that's probably how I'm going to play the slate, which doesn't mean that I'm not going to try to get different up top. But like, let's remember, like currently the lowest owned guy that I have over $8,600 is Jackson Coivin at 14.2% in single entries. There's also Russell Henley at 14.4%. Like those are good ownership numbers relative to some of the guys around them who are at like 25%, things of that nature. But like if you get another Coivin win at 14%, like that alone is not going to win you the tournament. You still have to be really good elsewhere in your lineup. So I'm mostly just going to say, all right, I've got my separators down in the 7K range. Now I can play whoever I want from the upper 8Ks and the 9Ks and the 10Ks. And I'll just choose the guys who I think are the most likely to have some real success this week and not really worry about ownership up top.
Yeah, I think that's key to remember is, like you said, I just used an example to show you could almost fill out the previous two with a lineup, but it wasn't quite. But it's just to show like that almost hits it just by picking some of those guys, and they all fit the mold of what we discussed there already. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go with this one, but any other methods you're thinking on how to leverage the chalk? I use like the Cam Young 2 9K guys. You just gave another example. Is there any other thoughts to getting different this week on this slate with the last Rocket Mortgage and all the changes to the course?
No, I think that's it. Cause again, like it's a week, I think, where you do it with the guys you play and not some kind of roster construction. Cause I don't, number one, like, I don't think there's going to be so put it this way, like we know that a lot of people are going to load up on the upper 8K to low 10K range, right? In a major championship, if that were happening, we could say, okay, one of the ways you can deviate is you can go pay up for Rory or pay up for Rahm or pay up for Scotty. And that alone will kind of put you in your own range. Or you can go down to the low 6Ks in, twice instead of the 7K range 3 times. We don't have that, right? It's a very condensed pricing pool, not just it's not just like one where you have all these guys available at the 8s and the 10s. Like there's no way around that, right? Like any lineup, even a super balanced lineup is going to start in that upper 8K range. Even a quote unquote studs and duds lineup is going to start in that upper 9 to 10K range. Like everything is just very similar to one another. So you can't really deviate structure wise this week. You have to do it through the players.
Yeah. And I think we talked a lot about that. So we don't need to, keep beating that one down, but to the point being of you will find certain ranges. Like say like the 8K range is going overlooked as a whole. It's just, it's so easy to get to Hideki and up. And even if you include Nap and Spawn, like from Spawn up, it's easy to play 3 of those options together. We just showed multiple ways, if even going to the very top, where you could have like Cam Young, Clark, and Cantlay or Matsuyama, like we showed. So like you can definitely play 3 of these guys. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that makes it so the 7,200 and down range is kind of overlooked completely. Like almost all those guys, because most people can easily land in a Meisner and above, and whoever else you have fitting in there, if it's Connors or Davis Thompson or whatever your chalk is there. Cole, we talked about Sung Jae at 7K flat. Fine. He's like maybe the one down there, but outside of that, most will be sub 5%. It gets really spread out. So like Alex said, you can just pick the plays that you like that fit whatever you're doing. But I would still be thinking of it, like I say, outside of that, for me, it's still the process of what am I doing with my build and why, and how am I attacking this course? And that to me makes it so that you land on your guys that fit that. And it's not just the picks and plays, it's the picks and plays that go with the process you're using. So hopefully that helps. Let's talk a little bit about one and done. We got to hit that quickly just because obviously one and done's rounding out the season. Many are just going down the stretch. If you guys have your questions, you could throw them in there now. But what are you thinking for one and done as the season winds down? There's, a lot of guys that people don't have remaining. And now it's kind of like pure strategy time, right? There's only a few events left. If you're out of it, you can't just play the same guy everybody else is playing, even if they are just the best on paper play.
Yeah. I got news for you, by the way. We didn't have a leverage lane last week, but we had Jackson Coivin in our joint entry. So go us. We got a win. We're all the way up to 4,016th place. So we're making moves now.
I sent my dad this morning in the Mayo one, same one. We're 1,900th and 2,000 because we each have our own entry. And what did he say for this week? He's using Jake Knapp this week. He likes Jake Knapp.
Yeah, I don't even. When does this end? Let me find this. So dates, it runs through the BMW. Okay, So, like the Rocket, $10,000 purse, Wyndham 8.5, FedEx St. Jude, and BMW both 20. Like we can get another Koivu type win, and that'll help, of course. But the position that we're in, we have to nail the FedEx St. Jude and the BMW, and we probably have to do that at fairly reasonable ownership. So the number one thing that I'm thinking of this week is we got to make sure that we have two really good options for those 2 weeks. So like I look at this board, we don't have Cam left, we don't have Xander, we don't have Goddard up, we don't have Koivu, we don't have Henley, we don't have Hideki, we don't have Nikolai, Fowler.
Who do we have?
We've got Wyndham, we've got Siwoo, Cantlay, Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn, Jake Knapp, Ryan Gerard, Michael Thorbjornsen. I'll tell you right now, like my preference, I think, is Jake Knapp. His splits are really, really good. Let me read them off. So 0.3 of a stroke better in easy conditions. He gains strokes in 5 percentage points more of his rounds in easy conditions. He has a 3.7 percentage point boom boost. So he's gaining at least, I think that's 3.3 strokes to the field, 3.7 percentage points more often in easy conditions than in all other conditions. And when you think of it, like how often are you gaining 3.3 strokes in a round, right? It's not very often. So 3.7%, like that might be as high as a 25% boost or something like that. So I think this is a really, really, really good spot for Jake Knapp coming off a very nice week for him. So yeah, I like that quite a bit. And yeah, exactly. How do we make up $13 million this week in one and done? And like I said, you got to know the last two, right? When you're getting, I think it's $4 million for the winner in each of those weeks. So like 8 in the last two is not impossible.
Yeah. Scooter said time machine. Hart went the other way. Said give up. That's Cade said give up and try again next year. But I think it is interesting that you just look at, the setup of it and say, oh, it seems impossible, but it actually is possible. It's like the big events exist to still make it happen. Is it likely? No. But is it possible? Yes. Kevin Garnett will tell you anything is possible. Alex now will tell you with LeBron showing up in Philly that anything is possible because now you got yourself a pretty stacked starting five over there for the 76ers this coming year. I think that's interesting. Like obviously outside sports topic, we're on a golf show, but I will say really fun stuff going on in sports. I'm getting all the football updates while we were live on this show. It's, Mahomes to Rice pass crossover, like the, stuff people are talking about. So everyone's getting excited for football coming back, and we will be here for Leverage Lane for that as well. Got a lot of other stuff coming. Nick says, maybe I'm the dumb one here, but I find it interesting that LeBron James, speaking of LeBron James, who we just talked about, misses his first cut by 2 strokes, drops to 7.3K, and now no one wants to play him, which is also funny because Koivu did not show up at his first event. Then he goes, I think it was T10 at the ISCO, and then goes on to win. So not saying Ben James is going to hit that trajectory or that path, but it's funny about all this stuff. That's what I said earlier, like John Deere Classic. I'm not saying they're the exact same at all. I'm just because, especially with the course changes, things, I'm just noting like these types of events, but like 50% of the field or something in these large field or the small field stuff wanted to play Andrew Novak in the Fantasy Golf World Championship, and now nobody wants him, and he's at basically the same price. Like, what do they want with him there that they don't want with him here? It's like, oh, but they just found out. Well, you'll find out, all right, is if you don't play him, then he comes back and crushes it again. Like anything can happen.
Yeah, I think with someone like Ben James, though, like we should be reactionary because we have a small sample with him, and so like each new data point is a meaningful new data point, right? Like when JJ Spawn has a really bad iron week, we don't say, oh, well, now I don't really know if Spawn is a good iron player. Like, yeah, of course he's still a great iron player. With Ben James, now we have 2 very good iron performances in his last 6, 2 neutral, and 2 really bad iron performances. So, as of last week, we were saying, oh, you know what? I think this guy's a really good ball striker. I think he's a great iron player. And now I'm not as confident. I'm not anywhere near as confident in his iron play moving forward as I was. So I think it's not totally irrational to kind of react to Ben James in that way. Whereas like, let's say he had put up another good iron performance, drove it well. Like he's driving it fairly well, but nothing special. He doesn't have distance. So maybe not the best fit, better fit last week, I would say in that regard, but also like, it looks like his around the green game is a real weakness. maybe a better putter than we thought he was going to be. So like that's a good thing. But like if he had put up another really good iron performance last week and just couldn't make a putt, I would be much more inclined to agree and say, okay, yeah, I don't really care about the missed cut. I'm going right back to him, because when he's good, he seems to be quite good. So the upside's still there. I don't think he's a bad play in any way. I'm just saying, like, I don't think it's totally irrational to not be on him after last week.
Yeah, I think that's what people like to do. I guess where I'm a little bit different is like the sample's just too small. Because it's like you said, it's true. Every piece of the sample is new data, and that's why you're the data analytics guy. But it's like it is nice to get more data, but it's also like it's just so. How do we know? Like if that, I mean, honestly, that's what I hated. So we were, by the way, flabbergasted when Koiven got to 32% in the Fantasy Golf World Championship. Like there was no reason. There was so many guys around him, above and below. None of the projection sites really had him popping that crazy. He'd burned people in the FGWC already. If there was any bias to that, it was just so wild that he popped to 32%, and then of course goes on to win. So I know some people were tilted from that perspective, but it's like the sample said like bad, good, but we know his history is amazing and his upside looks like incredible long term. But I just thought it was like one of those things where you just never know with these new guys as they're coming out. And we see it all the time over the years playing DFS. It's typically not with the new guys, and it's more with one of the other most common things a DFS player will say to me is, and I'm sure you've heard a billion times, is like, of course, so-and-so goes off the week after I was on him. And it's like, that's the thing. But a lot of the times the weeks are very similar. It's like last week to this week might end up being very similar, but it's like people will just move off. This week, I'm not build the exact lineup, but I mean, you could literally put out a lineup that has Pearson Coody, Kiefer, Suber, who else was the other guy I said down there? Mac Meisner.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple others, but my point being, like, all those guys that people wanted last week and now they're not, that nobody really wants them this week. It's like some of them actually played good in round two, even last week. And like just have you can't make on those types of courses like last week for them. Like I know I preface it saying how hard it is. For these guys, it's not hard. And you cannot have a bad day, and you only get speaking of sample size, you only get 2 days to have it happen. It's like, shit, I just couldn't afford a bad day today, or else, it would have been totally different. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of fun stuff with this DFS week. So I'm excited from that perspective. One and done. I'm good with Jake Knapp. Anything for the betting breakdown this week before we get to our leverage lanes?
Actually, I don't have any outrights yet. It's on my list of like first things to do this afternoon. It's been a very, very, very busy week. But there are a couple comments in here I want to highlight. First, Aaron, I actually like ran through a list of guys in the low sevens that tried to answer your question without doing it directly. Scooter made a really good point kind of on the ball striking from Ben James and how the approach play was really bad, primarily because he went in the water on 18. And I want to say two things here. First, I think it's a really good idea to kind of evaluate, in small samples, like, does this guy look this bad because he was just bad throughout, or was it like one or two outlier swings? However, there are two things with Ben James that I think are important here. The first is that wasn't the only reason why his approach play looked really bad. Even on Friday, he lost over a full stroke with his irons, even if you exclude that water ball on 18 that cost him 1.8 strokes.
That's what I just had up. He lost 1.8 on hole 18, but he also lost over almost 2.5 strokes across the first 3 holes. They were rough.
Yeah. That was ugly. The second point I want to make here is we don't have enough of a Ben James sample to kind of know this at this point, but we don't always want to just throw out those quote unquote outliers, because it is very important that we find players who are making the correct miss, right? Like we talk about this a bunch. Gary Woodland had a very real chance to win last week, except for the fact that he made the wrong miss twice on 18. He came up short in the water. If he just plays 18 well instead of as poorly as he did, he would have been right there with Koiven. So we want to there's very real signal is essentially what I'm saying in finding the players who routinely make the wrong miss. Now, we don't know that that's Ben James yet. This is a very small sample. Because he's young, I do think like that's a little bit more likely than most guys. But yeah, it's not something that I automatically want to just toss out, especially for a young guy. Like this is was he trying? In other words, like we don't know what was going through his head. Did he select a club that was meant to carry 2/3 of the way into the green and he just hit it a little bit high on the face and it just didn't carry for that reason? Maybe he misjudged the wind. Or was he saying, oh, I want to try and go make eagle? Because I think if I remember correctly, that was the front left pin that was actually like in a bit of a bowl. And if you landed it kind of in that front third of the left side of the green, you could get the backstop and have like a 15, 20 footer for eagle. Was he too aggressive trying to do that and then just came up a little bit short? And so, because we don't have that information, we can't possibly know that. I think that's an important thing to just say, like, I don't want to toss that out. I want to take note of the fact that he made a really, really bad miss there. And we'll see in time if that's a consistent flaw of his game or if that really was an outlier and we should be really confident about his approach game moving forward. So I just wanted to talk through that kind of thing because that's the sort of thing that I think gets lost a little bit when we look at PGA analytics, right? It's like not every outlier swing is the same. We can learn more from some than others. And particularly we can learn from a large sample of whether guys are making that miss or not over and over.
Yeah. And I'll say this, a couple things. One, we had the suite on 18 for Saturday, Sunday. So I didn't get to see it on Friday, but I will say the Gary Woodland on Saturday was very painful for more for him. Obviously you could see it right on his face. Cause you know why? Cause it was the massive drive. He was much closer than expected. And I was like, there's no way. Like he just went in the water. Barely anybody was going in it at that point, and he couldn't believe it. And it was the best drive of the day. It was just perfect out there. It was like, nobody's hitting from there. It's like half the distance between where the layup guys are and the drive guys are. And it's like, he was right in the middle of it. He hated himself after that one. That one really stung. And then another note, just goes back to you digging into the rounds. I think that's why this is so important. Not enough people do it. It's more showdown related, but on Sunday, Davis Chatfield or whatever, I forget that guy's name is, but anyway, he was almost 30% in the round 4 showdown contest. Hubbard, who started the day like 2 strokes behind him at the exact same price, was I think 6% to 28% was the difference in the two of them, right? So like 3 guys had him versus that many. So my point being, though, if you looked at Hubbard and what I saw in round 3 was like Chatfield was all putter, short game. Like there was nothing really standing out. But if you looked at Hubbard, he'd made 7 birdies, only 1 bogey. He left the par 5 out there at the end and his approach looked horrible. But when you actually dug in, it was the one hole. It was 18 where he went into the water and lost a stroke and a half basically. And it was like that to me was where I'd been in this spot too many times. I was like, I could play the safe guy in Chatfield or I could just take Hubbard at this, no ownership because of 1 bad shot. And then I looked at the other rounds, and in round 2, it wasn't too bad. He left some par 5s out there, but he made birdies. In round 1, he left some par 5s out there, but his approach was strong throughout and just missing with the putter. That's the type of stuff where when you do those deep dives and dig in and then know how to actually apply it, have the data to use it, you're good to go. That's kind of the combination that leads to DFS success, at least in my opinion. So anything you want to add besides that, my friend? If not, let's get into our leverage lane for the week. I'll let you go first.
I think it's time for leverage lane. Let's see. Where do I want to go here? I think my leverage lane is going to be hammering that low 7K range. And I mentioned some of these names already, but Cootie, Kiefer, Wallace, Grazerman, Potgieter, Michael Kim, Kevin Yu, all of these guys are popping like crazy in the GPP scores. All of these guys project pretty well. And then I'll probably just say, okay, well, which of these guys also directionally benefit from the splits that I'm looking at this week? And I'm guessing that it's not going to be like all 7. And hopefully it's 2 or 3 of them. And it just like makes, the lineup kind of build itself pretty seamlessly. But yeah, I think that to me is the range that really stands out. Is like, these are the really, really inefficiently owned players for their upside. And when you think about like surrounded by Meisner, who I do think is a good play, Cole's obviously in really good form. Meisner has really good splits as well, but we're talking like a quarter of the ownership of those guys on a lot of the guys that I just named. And so I think that's just really, really inefficient. Certainly when you look at like the top 10 odds for them, like Meisner, Grazerman, Wallace, Cootie, Gim, Connors, Suber, like all these guys are separated by like a percentage point at most. So the fact that those 2, Coles and Meisner, are like 2, 3, 4 times as owned as the guys around them with the exact same top 10 odds, to me just seems like a really kind of inefficient way to build down there. And so I'm going to try and take advantage of that for my leverage lane.
Yeah, I typically am a cootie truther. I always get it on that. Don't do the deep dive on his Friday round to see if it was just one hole, because it was definitely not just one hole. That's crazy how much red you see and how dark red that is for some of those holes he played poorly, but it could just been a bad day for him. I like the upside long term, and at a course like this could be even better, especially if the splits lean that way. For me, I was trying to think about how to say this a couple different ways. I definitely think there's something to be said that, like, just seeing, again, everybody has different stuff, but like the win equity is up there, but there's still some down here. And then you got a lot of other stuff in here. I wouldn't build a complete 8K balanced build at all here personally. So I guess I'll say it the other way, but I wouldn't hate if you had 2 or 3 8K guys, as opposed to most lineups having 0 to 1 with just spawn or like spawn and something else. So I could say it that way, but the other way I'll say it, Alex, is that I think everybody has 2 of these guys. And so I'll say this, either I'm only going to go 1 9K and above guy. So I'll figure it out that way and then drop into that more balanced build. So I'm not going to get stuck with like you've got the most obvious 5 8K guy build or whatever that people land. I wouldn't do that at all, but I could do like Siwoo and then drop down. And I don't have the other guys up there, and it just goes that way. But another thing I'll say is, if I'm going to play 2 guys up above, I'm going to play a combo of the 2 lowest owned. So whether it's something like a Henley Cantlay, we'll see it like Siwoo versus all of those around him. He might not end up being the lowest, but I'm thinking if he does come in where, let's say I think Koivu ends up, and our ownership updates tonight, and Koivu's lowest out of everybody up there because Clark gets a boost, Siwoo gets a projections boost, Xander's squeezed, but it's just the squeeze boost. Like, he's still going to be at a big number. Well, then I would probably think about playing, like, you could do like a Koivu Henley or something. And something like that's going to be completely unique, where I'm not saying to go away from this upper range, but I'm saying it in a different way that would still put me into the 8Ks, where I'm going to have at least 2 8Ks. So the best way to probably say it is 2 8K plus, and most likely in those 2 8Ks, not going to include spawn for my main lineup. When I do it, I've got a couple other guys in there that I like. So not a full balance build, but a couple different ways that I'm thinking about it. If not, you don't like that way, the one I gave away earlier was in consideration as well, where I said it's like Cam Young, 2 9Ks, and then get different down low. That's another great way that I think you can go this week too. So there's a couple for you guys for this week. Alex, let the people know everything else you've got going on. You talked about BlickAnalytics.com and all that, but you've got tons of other stuff. It's been a busy couple of weeks for you, my friend. So let them know where they can find you, what you've got going on, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it on Pat's show last week, but I can't remember if I've mentioned it yet on Leverage Lane. But now that all of the ownership projections, all of my projections, and all of my GPP scores are available through my Discord at BlickAnalytics.com. The price will go up for the NFL season, but anyone who gets in before September will be locked into the current price forever. So use promo code LEVERAGE. You get 10% off, and you get locked into the current price forever. It's a really good deal. And I mean, we're just doing so many really exciting things over here in the Discord. And I know you're in there, Pat's in there, and it's been a ton of fun. I've already teased it a little bit, but like the NFL roster construction data project that I did, like I've already done this for MLB, and it's led to a really, really good MLB season for me so far. And I know a lot of my subscribers have said the same thing. Like, as soon as the MLB roster construction data came out, like, it was just kind of automatic. Like, they've had the best MLB season of their lives. I expected similar results for the NFL roster construction analysis, which is like, hey, if we do this, it's a bit of an advantage. If we do this, it's a bit of an advantage. And if we add up these subtle advantages, they can create a pretty good advantage for us. The NFL roster construction analysis showed that, like, there are massive inefficiencies that people are doing. They're not building certain stacks anywhere near often enough. They're doing certain things way too often. We put these together. Like, I can't wait for the NFL season. So trust me, you guys want that data. It's available exclusively in the Discord. So I'll see you in there. And like I said, use promo code LEVERAGE for 10% off. That discount is every single time it renews, you get that same 10% off, and you're getting 10% off of the grandfathered in price. So now's the best time to get in there for sure.
Yeah, you want the data, you want that stuff. Like Alex said, I'm over in the Discord. There's a ton of cool information, and specifically with NFL, just getting us even more excited for that. Only part 1's out. I've read it twice, and it's a lot, but it's very good, and I'm excited for part 2. So like I said before, guys, if you want to learn how to play the game first and get that down, Mastermind's the place to go. It's one-time payment. There's no monthly or any recurring. You can pay less than $50. Gets, do what I've taken thousands of hours to learn and learn it in a day, and a 9 to 5 shift, if you will, of like a Saturday. It's 7 hours of courses that you can go through, but they're actual modules where it teaches you like each category. There's 20 categories to break it down. You can listen to it on podcast feed. It's less than $50. If you want Ship It Nation, go to shipitnation.com. You can still get the first month, including Saber Sim, for less than $50 as well. These are all small costs to pay as part of that tuition. I just talked about earlier, hanging out with some of the best DFS players in the entire world, at least with PGA DFS at Fantasy Golf World Championship, all saying the same thing, that you pay for your education, you pay to get ahead. It's to skip steps. It's to learn things, learn how to apply them. Get with Alex, get with Ship It Nation, get the data, learn how to actually use that data to your advantage to create your own process and not just follow somebody else's picks and plays. And that's going to put you in the position to find more success. But even when you do come up short, like we talked about my Fantasy Golf World Championship, we put a bow on it all here, 18th place. Yeah, I would much rather a podium finish, but you got to get in the event first. That takes a lot of the stuff to get there. And then you can only be putting yourselves in those positions. The more often you put yourself in there, the more the opportunity exists to give yourself a shot to hit one of those life-changing scores or the events that you want to see happen. So check us out. We'll be back next week for the Wyndham, the final event before the playoffs, right? We've got that coming up. So next week, same time, Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. That's going to do it for this week, guys. For Alex and for myself, ToeTagginTambo, good luck in your contest this week. Let's ship it.